so we'll just start off and just ask questions, and we're just going to knock them out.
Brooke, what question did you have?
I have a question based off of the chart that you had up there for the carbs and the refeed days, high and low days.
Yeah.
What's the best way to structure your workouts to be most effective during the up and down of that?
Great question. So for the people tuning in on Facebook Live, how do you structure training to go with carb ups and refeeds? And I think there's something we should all answer, because I don't know if we do things differently or not, but since you asked me, I'll start off. I always tell my clients to train in a higher rep range on the days that they're going to load carbs, whether it's for peak week or whether it's a high carb day. And that's because you deplete more glycogen when you train in the higher rep ranges, like 15, 20, 30 rep ranges. And you actually take up carbohydrates better that way, because the goal is to fill the muscle back out. If you do squats sets of 3 and it causes a lot of muscle damage, it actually impairs insulin sensitivity to some degree. So a lot of people think, I'm going to go squat really heavy and I'm going to earn my carbs. But you're not going to store carbs as easy as if you did the higher rep range training that day. And then I also pair up HIIT cardio, because that's glycogen depleting. So on a high day for a client, like the one that was up there at 350 carbs, they might train a push day, chest, shoulders, triceps. They might do 5 HIIT intervals after they're done, and the training's all going to be done in the 20 rep range, for example. And that's to help carb up. Now, the heavy training goes the day after. So now you're all glycogen loaded, and if you have to train legs the next day, like me, if I'm ever going to train legs, it's going to be the day after I've had a bunch of food, because I just don't like it. I'm going to have a better training session because all that food is in me. So that's how I like to pair mine up. You guys?
You notice when John said, if I'm going to train legs, it wasn't when I'm going to train legs.
last night.
So I'll go, only because I agree with John from a standpoint of a higher rep range, but I know how you're programmed right now. So it wouldn't really matter a particular body part, because your workout has some volume in it and some heavy weights usually on the same day. So I like that the same way, but a lot of my clients are going to do a kind of a combination of some heavy compound sets, and then we'll get into some auxiliary higher volume stuff.
Well, if I didn't know you were his client, I would have told you some crazy shit.
I do things a little differently. I think first and foremost, I let preference be the guide in terms of how you want to structure that, because ultimately I find that what is most sustainable to one person may be unsustainable to the next. I know that sometimes if I try to structure my week in a manner that somebody else does, it just doesn't feel right to me, and so I let personal preference be the biggest guide. But I actually usually encourage my clients to actually take an off day on their refeed day, which is so opposite of what I know almost everyone does. But if you've ever had a refeed day on an off day, there is complete feeling of recovery. You wake up the next day and you feel really good, because also it allows you to rest. And I would even say, I tell people to maybe even try to make it on an off day from work. Like, make it a day where you just don't do much. And you'd be surprised at how refreshed you can feel for the rest of the week, mentally and physically, when you have an off day from training where you don't need to get your adrenaline up. You can eat, you can sleep, you can rest, and then the rest of the week you are ready to go.
Have you found that people don't like that?
I think they're usually opposed to the idea of it in the beginning, and then they try it and they're like, oh shit, this feels really good. It's the way I've done it for years for my own stuff. I mean, I always do my biggest refeed days on a day where I have fewest check-ins and I don't train, and I try to get a little more sleep that day, and then I feel a lot more energized the rest of the week because I've had that complete day of just shutting it down.
And have had zero issues getting your clients shredded. Because we could debate it, and here's the thing, I've actually become more open-minded to that. My thoughts used to be, well, your insulin sensitivity is the best after you train, and why not carb load? But when you're depleted and you're getting ready for a show and you're getting leaner, your insulin sensitivity is better and you're depleted anyway. So
yeah, I will say there's some individuality in that. You know, when you say people that don't like it, I would say the people that probably need it more. Like, I'm a pretty up and always on the go person. I find that people like myself tend to do a little bit better with that. Somebody who's maybe not a more hyperactive type person will probably do better training on a refeed day. They'll feel a little bit better in that manner. So I would say let personal preference. Usually if you let personal preference be their guide, people will fall into the manner in which they feel most recovered.
next question. Oh, this isn't good.
Wow.
We're on Facebook Live. Yeah, all the way in the back.
So you talked about doing less steady state cardio closer to contest time if you're already lean. Is there like a specific amount of time
Yeah, so
Give us a specific amount when you talk about steady state.
yeah, the question was when you're all the way stage ready and you start to pull out steady state cardio, what was the rest of it?
Is there a specific amount of time that you risk losing more muscles as opposed to just doing plastic?
Is there a specific amount of time when you can lose more muscle if you leave it in?
20, 30, 40 minutes? Or?
Yeah, and here's the thing. None of that stuff's been looked at, so literally all we can answer is what we've seen over the years. So I just know one thing. If steady state cardio is in there to burn fat and you're all the way stage lean, and I see this more with guys because you're going to get way leaner than a female. If you're leaving steady state cardio in, long term it's there to burn fat. You don't have a lot of fat to lose, you're going to lose muscle. So I literally will, sometimes I'll pull it way back. Like if someone's doing 50 minutes a day, I might not add food right away, but I'll cut their steady state cardio in half because you're not going to gain fat if you all of a sudden cut your steady state cardio in half. I've seen people continue to drop because I've cut it so drastically because it's steady state. Your body, it's not like it's HIIT cardio and training, right? It's steady state. I've seen people actually look better and actually drop weight because I've dropped it, and that's due to that drop in cortisol that I was talking about during my slideshow. So it's one of those things I wouldn't try and hold on to it as much as possible. You test it for 3 or 4 days. Like literally cut it in half if you're doing a bunch and watch and see. You're not going to just get fat all of a sudden. Most people are going to look better.
So I would say with that, this is actually one area where John and I actually completely oppose each other on our viewpoints, is that actually I don't use HIIT at all for most of my clients. So I do pretty much only steady state, low intensity steady state, and moderate intensity steady state. If there are a few very rare cases where I do use HIIT, that's usually what I'm pulling out first. But I agree with him 100% that once you're really lean, like work on getting any form of cardio down. Like I think that's like the biggest thing is trying to get cardio down. While a lot of people are like usually jonesing for more food once they're really lean, I'm like you're gonna be a lot better if you just cut the cardio and left food the same even. And so, like he said, I totally agree with you. Want to prep on as little cardio as possible, and then then I think just cutting cardio down in general is just going to be a great idea.
I had a question about the cardio and intensity level. So you said low intensity, moderate intensity. What are you determining that by heart rate or E or?
I usually perceived exertion. Like I'll let somebody do like a low intensity, maybe 30% of their perceived exertion. Usually something of the pace of a brisk walk for low intensity. Maybe a 60 to 65% of moderate intensity. So, like a light jog or something like that. You can do whatever mode of cardio you prefer, but that would be usually where I fall. I guess I would say just my main reasoning for going with the lower intensity steady state is that I just think HIIT gets to be a little taxing, and it takes very little recovery or mental effort to go for a walk. And then that mental and physical energy can then be translated into better training. So that's the main reasoning for it.
And Cliff and I, when John was up, Cliff and I were talking, he said, which form of cardio do you use? And I said, both. But I do like HIIT in an off-season setting, and steady state more in a prep, for the simple fact that it can be mindless, and Netflix is a treat.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I'll even tell a lot of my clients, like, go for a walk and go for a walk with a friend, or it may sound really dumb, but like me and one of my friends, we actually like we will literally just go walk around the mall as like a form of cardio, like a couple of teenagers, but it also kind of gets my because in prep we become consumed with bodybuilding. And like I said, it's all about like it's also a way to kind of avoid that up. You know what I mean? Like because you're just always up. And I try to. I think it's good to have those periods of mellow. Like try to talk about things that are not bodybuilding related at certain points. It's good for. It's not only good for your life. I think it's actually good for your bodybuilding to talk about things that are not bodybuilding related. And you can go walk around the mall. You burn a few calories. You keep your NEAT up. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And you burn some calories, and then you'll just feel a little more balanced in that way.
I think we probably all agree on the best cardio is the stuff that people are going to stick to. Because I've got clients where I tell them to do HIIT, and they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like they're not, but they'll walk. they'll put the hoodie on and go. You know what I mean? They'll go.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
But I think you're right though, because it becomes difficult. I think more in particular more with female clients, because then there's that balance of like, some women will get up to like an hour of cardio a day, and you're like, that's a lot of time out of your day that you're eating up. So I agree though. I think it's whatever becomes least stressful to the person. Some people get stressed out at the thought of an hour of cardio. Some people get stressed out at the thought of 10 minutes of HIIT. I think whatever stresses that person out the least. Stress in prep, mental and physical, is just a killer. They've done studies that absolutely show that mental stress, definitely impacts your recovery from your weight training. And so the more ways you can de-stress, the better. And they've even shown more experienced competitors retain a lot more muscle than newer competitors. And it's probably almost solely for the fact that they're just not stressed out like crazy. Newer competitors are like, am I going to be ready? Am I going to look good enough? You know, am I going to place well? Older competitors are like, I've been through this. Whatever happens, happens. I know I'll be fine. You know.
We're getting some questions on Facebook here. So one of the questions is, what is the optimal frequency per muscle group and rep range?
The new research coming out seems to be showing two times per week. 2 times per week. Brad Schoenfeld's been doing a lot of research on this, and more and more, I'm not saying it can never go outside that box, but for muscle growth, his research seems to start to be pointing towards 2 times per week. But I'm not saying 1 or 3 can't be effective.
I've talking with Dr. Pete Fishin, a good friend of ours. He actually pointed out something to me. We were all at your house like last year, year before. He actually pointed out something to me. A lot of people got caught up when, DUP started to become more well known. They got caught up with training body parts 3 times a week. So you'd have someone going from training once a week to 3 times a week, and they would get hurt because they thought that would maximize muscle gain with more frequency. That's what we're talking about. So if you're squatting to try and bring your legs up 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, most clients that I know that only train twice a week on their leg days. Leslie is a perfect example. My fiance, she's crushed world records. She's put on a ton of muscle. She left that behind and started going to twice a week training, and she put on more muscle in the last 2 to 3 years doing that than training 3 times a week. And the important thing that I wanted to point out was not just anecdotal evidence. Pete pointed out to me, your tendons don't recover like your muscles do. Your muscles can recover a couple days later and you're ready to go again. Your tendons might take 3 to 4 days later. So if you're squatting 3 times a week, think about your tendons. They're not necessarily getting recovered like your muscles do, and that's where I think a lot of people are getting overuse injuries.
We were literally talking about that before this even started. Like, there was a real big fad for a while with the DUP training.
It's a
style
great,
of training.
by the way.
Yeah, but I think it works well for short term when people were doing the same movements, squatting and deadlifting 3 and 4 times per week. People were getting crushing injuries, and like they were acting like there was no correlation there. Like there was definitely some correlation there. Like getting these injuries popping up. So I do think usually 2 times per week is a really good sweet spot.
And I guess it was a Facebook Live, but so if you're training legs, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to squat both times. You mix up your exercise selection, and if you're going to squat one day, maybe you don't. Maybe you do a front squat or a leg split, so you're not breaking down the same motions every time.
What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Okay, so the question was, what are our thoughts on intermittent fasting? Did we just record this on the TNT podcast? Were you on there when we did that?
Maybe.
So cheap plug, and since we have Facebook up too, Cliff's on there all the time. We run the Training and Nutrition Truth podcast, and we covered that because and the reason I bring that up, that's one of the most requested questions I've been getting the last 6 months, even though we've all been getting asked that quite a bit. But it's something it's starting to make the rounds again. So I think it's a good idea that we address, especially with Facebook going now. We get this out there.
Yeah. You want to take it or you want
I don't care. Here's my thoughts on it, right? If you're going to fast, everyone in here is here because this is a bodybuilding camp. You want to be as lean and as muscular as possible, and you also want to perform well. To me, it makes 0 sense to fast and not spike protein synthesis. So when you have a protein meal, you turn on muscle growth and protein synthesis because of protein. To hold that out for, guys, I don't even know what the hell the time frame is, 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it is. To hold that out, you are neglecting your body of that. Plus cortisol is going to be higher as well, which promotes all kinds of things that just muscle loss, fat gain, blah, blah, blah. So it's not something that I find ideal. If you're someone that wants to hold your calories for later in the day and backload them or whatever you want to call them, I don't really care. At least have protein spread throughout the day. Like that's not aminos, I'm talking about not BCAAs, I'm talking about protein. Just hold your carbs and fats and have those later, because honestly, I do that a lot, and it's not because I want to be a fat kid and I just want to eat a lot of food at once. I just prefer not to have a lot of food. I've only had a banana and a shake so far today, and I'm going to continue to space out, and then later tonight I'll probably just get caught up and I'm going to sleep like a baby. But like I've had zero issues with people prepping that way or off season, so at least have enough protein. I don't.
Well, and intermittent fasting, the popularity of it is kind of interesting to me, because it's like, it's been very clear that it's not better for fat loss. It's no better than regular dieting for fat loss, despite what has been written in a lot of like articles and things like that. It's just not better for fat loss. It's maybe a little better for controlling hunger. I will say that. You know, some people will find that their hunger is a little better on it, but it is actually worse for muscle growth. Because like John said, you can spike protein synthesis, but there's something called a refractory period. So after you eat a meal, you spike protein synthesis, and so people think, oh, I can just spike it again, but you cannot. You spike it, and then blood amino acid levels need to go back down to baseline before it can then be spiked again. So if you try to jam all of your eating into a 4-hour window, you're going to get like one protein synthesis spike for the entire day, which is not really optimal. Whereas if you had like 5 spread out protein feedings, you would get 5. So you're gonna be minimizing your muscle growth if you try to jam all of your meals. And like he said, you can spread your carbs out in a different manner, but at least make sure you maybe get 4 to 6 protein feedings throughout the day, and you'll optimize your growth levels.
And who asked the question? I didn't see. I like intermittent fasting, but I don't follow the rules in how it's, a 16-hour fast or whatever, for the simple reason that if I'm fasting, I'll technically break my fast. Or I have a couple of clients that will do intermittent fasting, but we break our fast with protein, and that is the only, whether it's a shake or something, a protein source. We're still intermittent fasting, but we're keeping protein there throughout the fast technically. So
Yeah.
I just can't not eat.
This kind of piggybacks off that a little bit, and I know some research you've done in the past. Obviously, having post-workout carbs actually prolongs protein synthesis. So for somebody who is primarily lower carb all the time, I mean, do you see a benefit in, I'm going to say, banking those carbs a little bit, like maybe not even having them pre-workout and having them mostly post-workout for that, or kind of saving all of your carbs, even if they're fibrous carbs, for like around your training primarily? Like, how do you normally set up those days? Because I know most of you are, all of you are macronutrients, and honestly, like, with Matt, as long as I hit my macros, he could care freaking less, like when I eat or what I eat or whatever, like just get him in. And so, like, how do you normally recommend that or set up your days?
So you're really trying to get Cliff and I to fist fight.
I know.
And the thing is, I apologize because I already know this.
If you guys are watching, I start chewing my lip, and he's over there like trying not to laugh, and I'm like, because there's a couple of things, and you're, I don't know where you fall. Yeah. So Cliff and I, there's things that we definitely debate on, and post-workout carbs is one, and HIIT and steady state cardio are the other. So let me tell you why I'm right and he's wrong.
By the way, we have these debates not only in public forums. Like, we have these debates like getting breakfast at the hotel, or like we're driving down to go pick up some monsters, and we're like, no, HIIT is not efficient for contest prep. We have these debates like literally all over the country.
So I'll tell you what I do with my athletes. I try and hold their carbs around their training because of this simple fact. I'm not opposed to what you're about to say at all, because here's the other thing. This is why you're the second best coach in bodybuilding. I'm open to learning. He's not. So Matt, by the way, Matt's the best coach in bodybuilding. So, anyway, I'm very open. So I've thought about a lot of what you said over the last year, and have tried it with a few people. But I don't want to. I'll let you talk on that. Here's what I do: pre, during, and post-workout carbs are the last places I'll pull carbs from, because insulin sensitivity is better around your training. And even though someone's going to be in a deficit, anytime you eat carbohydrates, most of the time you're going to store a little bit of fat and store mostly glycogen. It's just the way the body works, whether you're lean or not. So I always want to maximize the carbs where insulin sensitivity is the best, but also where their training and their performance is the best. So the last place I ever pull carbs is intra-workout and post-workout. At that point, I'll switch someone to high-fat keto, and I've got a lot of experience doing that, and I know when and where and how to do it. So before I get someone down to just post-workout carbs, 30 carbs a day, they're going to feel like ass. I'm just going to switch them out and have them high-fat keto anyway. So that's my thoughts on that. But I know you feel, and you've tried this with his clients, by the way, and it's worked great. So.
Yeah, and I guess I should say when like we debate these things, because it's the nature of our jobs, we are very nitpicky individuals. Like
And competitive.
Yeah. And so like even with the HIIT thing, like I used to use HIIT as my sole source of cardio, and then I went to steady state, and you actually went the opposite route. And then it's the same thing. I used to recommend a lot of post-workout carbs, but actually now when I diet people post-workout, in the immediate post-workout window is I'll put very few carbs there. In fact, oftentimes none. And my main areas where I want to see carbohydrates are pre-training, during, we agree on that, and before bed. So I'll put the two biggest carbohydrate meals pre-training and before bed. Pre-training because you have around the workout, you're going to have your glycogen levels at least at their higher end, and like you said, energy, especially when dieting, is at a very high premium. I don't want, while at lower intensities you're going to mostly use fatty acids as energy, but you're still going to be using up some of those carbohydrates throughout the day. And so I would like those carbohydrates to be used when they're going to have the biggest impact, and that would be before training. Also, I think there's a mental impact from eating usually, especially when we're dieting. We feel a little, I think we've all felt it, where you eat and then you feel a little more energized for the next hour or two. So I'll do that. And then during training, that kind of speaks for itself. It's just not a bad idea to have some intra-workout carbs while you're training in your bloodstream ready for use. But then before bed, I think it's really important because you will have higher sleep quality. Sleep quality during prep is such a big problem.
Especially towards the end.
Yeah, people just can't sleep. You're hungry. There's a certain I call it like dieting anxiety that people also get. That hunger feeling induces anxiety in us, and so if we can fill our stomachs a little bit, it reduces that anxiety, and you start to sleep a little bit better, and then you lean out a little bit better. So in the post-workout, I like to just I recommend usually pretty high protein intakes compared to what a lot of people do. So rather than like 25 grams of protein and 15 grams of carbs, I just do 40 grams of protein. And so that would also create, if you're doing 40 grams of protein from whey protein, that's also going to create a pretty large insulin response. Whey protein is very insulinogenic, so it does a really good job with that. And then I'll just go with a high protein intake post-workout.
And then you normally have, like if someone's having a shake post-workout, you'll have them have their next meal closer to that.
Yeah, an hour and a half later,
Yeah.
And then there will usually be some carbs in that meal.
Which that gets, the reason why I pointed that out, so that gets back to your original question. Having carbohydrates with your post-workout shake fuels the process of protein synthesis. So protein synthesis goes up when you drink a shake. When you add carbs to that, studies have shown, instead of protein only, will go up and go back down in 90 minutes. If you add, Gabe Wilson did this, if you add carbs to it, it actually extends it out over 3 to 4 hours. So now you get muscle growth over the course of 3 to 4 hours. But the other way to do that is just have your meal an hour later when it's starting to come down. So really, to me, this is where I've kind of become, it's like, we're probably just splitting hairs and arguing because it's us.
It's
you know what I mean?
It's either 2 spikes or 1 big spike. So yeah.
And what do you typically do?
Well, honestly, it's what is the person like? So if that's working, then we'll stay with that. However, if we see a stall or body fat isn't or weight isn't dropping, then evaluate it and maybe we put more carbs in post workout, or we take if they're doing that, then we move them. So honestly, I'm like Jessica said, I don't care unless I have to care.
Yeah.
Unless there's a reason for me to care.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Sorry to piggyback, but is that the same with fibrous carbs versus like any other type of carb? I mean, are you going to be using those fibrous carbs, or do you guys not count those
in the post?
Essentially.
I still have my clients count fibrous carbs because actually, contrary to popular belief, your body will derive some calories from fiber, usually maybe like 1.5 to 2 calories, so it's not the 4 calories per gram. But just for the sake of consistency, I tell my clients to count fiber. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, I don't have them do it around the workout if that's what you're asking. Fiber for glycogen replenishment, fiber, I get that. They should be getting that throughout the day. But as far as counting, I don't necessarily ask my clients to count every gram of fiber. I tell them to count it, make sure it's good in the off season before you start your prep, and make sure you're getting, females get 20, 25 grams, unless they're eating a ton, then you need to eat more, but 20 grams or so is good. And I tell them, don't change anything. Just leave your vegetables. If you're using a fiber supplement, just leave it all the same and don't change it. And just mentally, I found that that's easier for them. Back in the day, I used to tell them, oh, hey, veggies don't count, just eat all you want. And then the scale, people would be like gorging themselves on broccoli and stuff like that. But if you think about broccoli, a serving of broccoli is like 100 ounces and it's 4 carbs. Well, 2 fiber and 2 natural sugars. Well, fiber, even if you want to say it does or doesn't count as calories, which it does, the other 2 definitely do. So now if you're eating 20 carbs, you're getting 10 actual carbs that impact blood sugar and things of that nature, and they are energy. So it's one of those things I tell my clients, just don't worry about counting it, just keep it the same.
And this was not a question, but kind of piggybacking off of this, kind of you said like people gorging themselves on vegetables. Something it's a big pet peeve of mine, but like I think it's bad practice to start trying to just pound vegetables or chew 3 packs of gum per day or drink a gallon of Crystal Light a day to try to avoid hunger. Hunger is absolutely unavoidable. It is part of the process, and I can tell you right now, there's a higher fail rate in people that use those tactics to try to avoid hunger than people that just take a deep breath and learn to deal with it mentally. You manage the hunger. If you're trying to be avoidant of hunger, I promise it's just going to make the situation harder. It's like take a deep breath and let that wave of hunger wash over you, because it's coming no matter what you do.
It goes back to leptin. It's when you're lean, you don't have very much leptin in your body sending that signal to your brain that you're hungry. Like, there is no way to shut that off.
No, and like I'll even say with the artificial sweeteners aspect, like Crystal Light, chewing gum, Walden Farm syrups and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I chew a little bit of gum in prep, or I'll have a diet root beer or something like that. But when it becomes excessive, it can actually make you more hungry, because whenever you eat something sweet, it's a pretty primal signal to your body. Sweet flavor, calories are coming. And the problem is, if you push that button too many times, where you send that signal, calories are coming, but calories do not come, your brain actually becomes desensitized from sweeter flavors. When you actually do get calories, you don't get that same level of you don't get satiated quite as much, because you've desensitized yourself to sweet flavors. So just kind of a side note, just something that I see people go down that road of trying to avoid hunger, and it's just not going to work.
And I don't know, it was a while ago, probably 2.5 years, Cliff made a Facebook post about, and you've probably made more since then, about, look, you're going to be hungry, no matter if you're eating 3,000 calories a day. If you're used to 5,000 and you cut to 3,000, you'll be hungry. The post was like, you're going to be hungry. Let's stop bitching about it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I mean, really, I actually do another talk where I do it all about like managing things like this, and I actually think a good practice is to stop saying I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Because like and it actually kind of becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy. You say it, but then you also have to hear yourself say it, and then also the people in your life probably get sick of hearing you say it. Like I actually don't say I'm hungry and I'm tired. Like I stop saying that, and then also kind of just learning to like adjust your mind, adjust your way of thinking. Like when you start getting, because let's face it, we all get those moments in prep where you kind of start to feel sorry for yourself. You're like, I'm just so hungry and I'm so tired. Like take just like a minute and be like, okay, you know what, somebody on the other side of the world is maybe going to die tonight from malnutrition, and I'm purposefully controlled starving myself. I really shouldn't feel that bad for myself, and then you can kind of like, change your way of thinking in that moment. Catch yourself when you're doing it.
And one more final thing on that. We keep piggybacking around. I want people to understand.
We don't need you for this Q&A, by the way.
Let's do it ourselves. Hunger is going to be there when you're that lean, irregardless of calories. Because I've got a female named Emily. Athena, we were just talking about her. She's eating, and I'm not saying this to try and impress you, but she's 100% stage ready for women's physique, shredded out of her mind. She's eating 400 carbs twice a week. Her dieting low days are 310 carbs, and she is starving meal to meal because she's so lean, she's not getting that signal from leptin to her brain that tells you that you're full. So irregardless, you might end up dieting on 100 carbs, I might end up dieting on 150. It doesn't matter where you end up. It's the leanness that, in my opinion, that drives hunger just through the roof. Calories are just what they are at the deficit.
Follow-up question from Facebook Live. Would sparkling water trigger that increase in hunger?
The flavored?
Like a carbonated deal?
Yeah.
The flavor, if it's flavored, possibly. But once again, it's not going to happen if you drink like one a day or something. I'm talking to the people that take it to the excess. But if it's like the flavored, if it has some sort of artificial sweetener in there, it could trigger that. But it's not going to be like I drink one and then I don't get satiated from my food anymore. It's the people that, I mean, I've literally seen people use, they use an entire container of Crystal Light in their gallon of water. They chew 3 packs of gum a day. That's when it starts to become issues, that excessive behaviors.
I have a question in regards to nutrition. You had mentioned to spread out your protein throughout the day, but what about carbohydrates and fat? Is there a benefit to having a fat, carb, and a protein per meal, or does it really not matter?
I mean, I would say I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think carbohydrates, you get into issues of performance, and like we said, like with sleep, but fat, I think it starts to become a personal preference. Some people I know tend to feel better throughout their day if they eat more in the morning. Some people say they feel a little sluggish and a little heavy, so I think that's where personal preference. For me, I think personal preference starts to take hold, especially with fats, and then carbohydrates you consider performance. So protein spread evenly, carbohydrates consider your performance and your sleep, fats probably just wherever you're most comfortable.
Here's something a lot of people don't know, and this goes against a lot of what we've all been taught, but something I learned with fat, most people try and avoid fat post-workout, and they have carbs there, or they want to avoid carbs and fats post-workout at the same time. Here's something else that you need to think about. So if you have a cheat meal, for example, your body actually will use the fat, like if you have, I don't know, 2 or 3 slices of pizza, your body will actually store glycogen, and the fats will help run the processes of your body during that process. So it's not, your body can actually use fats pretty decently well when paired with carbohydrates after a workout. Now, I would rather see you got them out of the way and you just use carbohydrates and get glycogen restored. But if you're ever going to have a fat and a higher carb meal, it needs to be after their workout, because that's when your body's going to use it the best, when they're in the bloodstream at the same time. And a lot of people don't know that. So you'll store glycogen and you'll use some of the fats to help fuel the processes of the body. Now, that doesn't mean go eat a buffet and you're just going to burn through it all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, listen, if you have 15 grams of fat and 40 carbs post-workout, and you eat something that you really like a Hot Pocket or something, that's not going to be that bad. A lot of people think you have to have super low 0 carbs post-workout, and you just don't.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too, like probably with your question, I think a lot of people try to trick the system. They think like, I'll just have protein and carbs at this meal and then protein and fats at the other meal, and they can like sort of trick the system like by that, but it doesn't really work that way. Like John said, your body has a set way in which it processes things, and you can't really trick it, unfortunately.
When you're in a deficit, you're in a deficit. If there's any time that I would probably, and I have clients do protein fat meals, protein carb meals, mostly in the off season, because your insulin sensitivity starts to go to shit because your calories are so high. So I will, due to resetting insulin sensitivity, giving your body a break from carbs, I might drop carbs down and up fats at some other meals and just leave carbs around the training, just to give someone's body a break in the off season from just getting insulin pounding on the receptors over and over and over. So that's the only time where I really think that makes a difference. But in a deficit, I just have not seen any issues at all.
No.
It goes against everything that we've ever been taught. There's always these guidelines that we've all been taught, and then things come out and it just shows that it mostly is calories and calories.
Yeah.
Macros, it is macros and macros.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say calories, because then someone will just eat carbs all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked earlier about pulling caffeine out. Is there any issues with pulling caffeine out at the beginning of a prep so you can use it more towards the end?
Yeah, so the question was, when you're pulling caffeine out, is there any issues pulling it out at the beginning of the prep so you can use it more at the end?
Yeah. Like,
That's what I'm 110% for.
okay.
I like to recommend, like I said in the slide, 4 weeks out, cut your caffeine in half, use first form adrenal restore, and if you can keep cutting it in half, that's fine, but if not, give your body a break from it, and then save it to when you feel like shit later in the prep, then start to add more caffeine.
So 4 weeks out from starting prep or 4 weeks out from a show?
I do it 4 weeks out from starting a prep.
Okay.
Because that's when you're really, if you pull it out 4 weeks leading up to your show, that's when you feel the worst.
Right.
that's the last place I would want to see someone pull it out.
I agree. But I think there are things you can do, like if you've already gone really far, because I push the limits. I know that I push the limits myself, but actually I try to have 2 days per week where I have 0 caffeine. On my non-training days, I don't even want to reach for a diet soda on those days either. I just let myself be, and I find that it delays those adaptations to it. You're looking really crazy right now, but so I agree with him now, because there is some like research that shows that there's only a certain limit to the amount of adaptation your body can have, but also I've pushed those limits before, and I can say that it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel good if you start pushing limits to like 800 milligrams a day or something like that, because it just while you do still get something from the caffeine, like you said, you start to feel just really strung out and tired. And so I think sometimes even just a couple weeks of pulling it back, sometimes even 5 days of reeling it back in can do something. So like I know you're coming up close here, so like even just a few days of pulling it back and then building it back up from there could do something. So.
And I've tried taking Adrenal Restore and just keep pounding the caffeine to see.
Done it.
Not really. It doesn't work so well. So you really need to cut it back. I've tried that though.
I currently do that.
Well, let's see. You had one more?
Yeah, so another question was about keto.
You can't get through one.
Would it be beneficial to start keto towards the end of prep? And then also a follow-up question would be, are there certain body types that lend more towards being productive with keto?
Yeah. Do you do keto often?
No.
Okay.
Not often. I mean, if necessary, but I don't know if there's a body type that's better for it. But I know you do quite often. I've done it myself in the past. I felt like shit.
Well, so okay, I'll answer this for Cliff because all his clients come and ask me the question anyway. So, all right, no, but for real, I know you do it quite a bit if you need it.
Yeah.
So keto, I'll just start this off. The third book I'm writing is Advanced Ketogenic Dieting. In the very, very beginning of the book, I make sure it's very well known. Keto is not magical. Keto is not something that's going to be the best thing that you do leading up to the end of your prep to get all the way shredded. So it's a tool to use when it's time to use it. I like to think of us as guys building a house or whatever. We have all these different tools, and if we need a very specific tool for a certain little corner of something and we know it's going to work probably, or the high probability, then we use that tool and we get the last corner in the tile put in where we need to, instead of other ways that are just kind of we're running our heads into the wall. So I like to use keto as a tool. That's first of all. And most of the time I use it if I'm dropping carbs and adding cardio and someone's body is just fighting me really, really hard and I'm not seeing a lot of loss. And sometimes I'll see the scale may be going up and down more and their body's they're just stressed out. I don't think keto is anything magical, but I've noticed that some people, when I throw them on keto, mentally they get to eat bacon and cheese and burgers and things of that nature, and it's a complete different switch because they're so used to eating these other foods. And I usually wait until someone's starting to get, I don't remember who I was talking to earlier, low on carbs to where I'm going to have to start only having them have post-workout carbs or pre and post. So I just move it all out of the way. Most of the time, because their blood sugar levels are going to be shitty if they only have post-workout carbs that day, and they're going to feel like crap. So their blood sugar levels just aren't as good. Keto is much more stable when you have ketones in your blood levels for energy. So it's not just mental, but you also can feel better on keto on the same calories for the most part from a blood sugar standpoint. As far as looking better, now I have noticed whenever I take most people keto, I look to think, okay, I have a guy right now in Australia that's 2 weeks out. I took him keto 10 days ago. No matter what I was doing, his glutes were just not coming in. And so I took him keto, and he was only, I don't know his carb levels, they weren't super high. Now his pictures are really starting to just show progress, and it's just one of those things. I'm a firm believer that some people respond better to fats, and some people respond better to carbs. So keto is always something I'll throw in at the end if I feel it's beneficial, and that's it. And then finally, the last thing that I want to say to whoever asked that, some of us burn fats better, some of us burn carbs better in the bloodstream. So people like me, I operate better on fats. So when I'm on keto, I actually read really low blood levels of ketones, and you're somebody that responds really well to carbs in the off season, and your blood sugar is probably stable because you burn carbs really well in your bloodstream, and I don't. So my blood sugar stays higher in the off season on higher carbs. It stays lower because his body is designed to burn carbs better. Someone on keto, my blood levels stay lower because I use fats better. I'm going to guess if we put you on keto right now, your blood levels will probably be high. Does that make sense? So like some of us, Andy Frisella, same way. His blood levels are super low. Leslie's blood levels will be high because she burns carbs better. So it's just one of those things you have to really understand keto before you just go. It's not just about throwing numbers together. It's a very advanced process.
And I think you said use it as a tool, and I've got a client here that we use keto on, and that was okay. What else can we do to use? So we pulled that card out, and it worked to get her on stage. But now, since then, we've worked on her metabolism, getting her food back up. So we don't want to go there again. So that was kind of the last resort for us, and we don't want to go there again. So it's time off, build your metabolism back up, and then hopefully we don't have to go there again.
Yeah, I would say I also kind of use it as more of a last resort type thing, but I do agree with you in that, like, I think certain people just perform better on it, and I think it's one of those things where it's not people view it as tricking the system, but some people perform better, they feel better, so they move around a little bit, they don't feel as sluggish, that NEAT goes up. The drop in NEAT just counts for so much of your metabolic drop when you're in prep and when you're lean, and so like certain people, and you can even tell sometimes the type of people that are going to respond better to keto. You can really tell a lot by a person, not always, but a lot by just even looking at their body type a little bit. John's a little bit more rounded than I am. I'm kind of more of a thinner, like muscle belly type guy. Usually those people like me tend to run a little bit better on carbohydrates. People that are a little bit rounder tend to seem to do a little bit better with higher fats. I'm pretty sure you've seen that over the years.
Yeah, that was part of the question. Is there people that we see respond better?
And people get uncomfortable when I say this, but also like there's even racial differences between how people respond to diets. I mean, it makes sense. The environment that our ancestors grew up in was enough to change people's skin tone. It's obviously enough to change their metabolism and how they process certain nutrients. So I do tend to find that some of my black clients tend to run a little bit better on keto, whereas almost like the paler someone's skin, the worse they do on keto. And so I definitely see those correlations. And so I would say a lot of my, because I pride myself on being able to prep every demographic, male, female, white, black, whatever it may be. And so I do find that particularly if I have a black female client, I almost know we're always going to have to go to keto because it's almost inevitable. And I've had a lot of black female clients, and it's probably the demographic that has the hardest time losing fat. If you think your prep is hard, you don't even know what it's like. And so I hope some of my clients are watching because they'll laugh. You don't even know what it's like for a black female to try to get stage lean. It's very, very difficult. And so, that's one of those situations where I almost always know we're going to have to go keto. They'll feel better on it. But once again, you put someone like me on keto, I'm going to feel crushed by it, and my training is going to be terrible. So,
I think the other thing a lot of people don't realize about keto is, I don't care who you are, when you're done, you don't eat carbs for a while. When you're done, you're going to eat all the carbs, and you're going to eat extra. And there's a lot of mental rebound from keto. I know I'll reset my insulin sensitivity a little bit or give it a break, and I'll do keto for 4 or 5 weeks in the off season once a year because I just eat enough carbs. I start to just look a little bit fatter. My insulin sensitivity is not as good, but I can do it for about 4 or 5 weeks max. But every time after I'm done, and I'm a pretty strong-willed person, I'm going to fucking go to the cabinet at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to eat because I restricted myself. Guys, I mean, here's the thing. People won't admit to it. I just don't care. I mean, it's reality. You guys are going to go through that too. If you go through keto or a contest prep, it's the same thing. You restrict yourself, there's going to be that backlash. So keto, I've just noticed, has more of a backlash, especially the longer you do it. So I try and really limit it to 4 to 6 weeks max for somebody. We're getting ready to do your run. You're going to do 4 weeks and reset your insulin sensitivity, finish up your off season, and then start prep next year. It's one of those things, and I've emailed you. You're going to have to watch for it. When you're done, you're going to want to go eat. You're going to love it because you eat burgers and fries or burgers and cheese and all that stuff. But then after you're done, it's tough to reel it back in.
Hey guys, what are the demographics? Age. You guys see anything with that?
With keto,
Just all that in general.
the question for people tuning on Facebook, John Arnold asked, because he's the oldest person in the room, he wanted to know. John wanted to know what we think about age as far as, how does that factor into things?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that generally, as you age, you're just not going to be able to eat as much as you used to. I would say whatever held true for you when you were younger will still hold true, but just less of it. I don't know if you guys notice the same thing.
Shit.
Like I'm 33 now. I noticed. Well, I stay a little bit leaner. If anybody's followed me, I have some pretty. Yeah, I have some pretty good pictures. You could use me for that picture of film. But I can't eat as much as I used to when I was 22. It's not fun to say that, but your metabolic rate will decline as you get older, and it will do so a little bit each year after about the age of 25, if I remember right. And so, I would say that's the biggest thing that I noticed is just be prepared. Like, especially if you're somebody that's been competing for a while and you're in your maybe late 30s, and then you're competing every 3 years, by the time you're gonna have to expect you're probably gonna eat a little bit less each prep, and that's not fun, but it's just the truth.
We talked about this on one of your videos. It's not out yet, but as you get older, your protein needs actually go up. The need to have more leucine per meal goes up. So the older you get, you need more protein per meal, per feeding, and per day, because you become a little bit amino acid resistant as you get older. It's just part of the process. So instead of having, you might get by with, 30 grams of protein per meal. As you get older, you might need to start eating 40 per meal. And that's just an example. It's the same way for females. I've got a female, her name's Diana Gear, up in Washington. She prepped, she's 53 now, I think. She prepped a couple years ago and did Worlds. She won her pro debut, and she was eating 175 grams of protein a day, and she operates great on that. But she's also in her 50, and Katie, how long has Diana been training? I mean, decades. Bodybuilding, right? So she's been training decades in bodybuilding, so that's the other thing too. All those things that you have to consider, where if a 21-year-old bikini female wants to prep and eat 120 grams of protein a day, I'll have them usually higher. We do things a little bit different.
Yeah.
But they're going to be able to get by with 120 grams of protein a day. But when she's 55, she's probably going to need 150 or more, as an example. So that's something else that we consider when putting together protein, carbs, and fats. How old are you, Matt?
40.
When's your birthday?
About a month.
Oh, you're not
Yeah,
40
I got
yet?
you. No, I'll be 41.
Oh, okay.
I got you about like a year.
All right, you got you.
7-8 months.
All right, we're gonna figure out who the oldest person in the room is real
Gotta
quick,
be
and then we'll
John.
do a couple more questions. John Arnold, how old are you?
42.
Okay, look, wait, Katie's leaving. You're supposed to be showing Katie walking out the room.
They're the same age.
He's older than me then.
Okay, we got
I'll be 57.
57 and out-train everyone in the room, by the way. So, couple more questions, and then we'll
Yeah.
do the drawing. So, what other questions do you guys have?
You guys want to talk at all about the flexible dieting you kind of hear nowadays? I'm sure it's one thing.
Yeah, we can hit on that. How many people in here use flexible dieting right now? Okay, half the room. It's one of those things. I can also defer back to the Training and Nutrition Truth Podcast, episode 7. Cliff was our very first guest on, and we really hammered home everything on that topic. But flexible dieting is basically being able to eat the food that you want to eat and count it within your protein, carbs, and fats to some degree. Now, this is literally a whole hour-long discussion or more. So it's something that I'll say all my clients do. I used to have people just eat clean foods, and what I found was they couldn't stick to it. And if they could stick to it during a prep, and they made it all the way through, when they were done, they lost their minds. So flexible dieting has been a tool that's actually helped people, in my side of things, stick to the diet better during prep, and then also transition out and have a better off season, because they're literally just eating the foods they want. I'll just say that it's probably been the most important thing that I've adopted as a coach ever. Like it's that important for my clients.
I would say that, yeah, I agree with the flexibility. You choose your own foods, and there are not. I try to tell my clients, don't focus on good and bad foods, but focus more on overall diet, nutrition. Because it doesn't matter if this food or that food is more nutritious. It matters if your entire day was fulfilling your nutritional needs, if that makes sense. So, it's not like one cookie put into your macros is going to push you over the edge to be unhealthy. But if you get all of your carbs and fats from cookies, then that might be a problem. And so the food choice, it's not to say that food choice doesn't matter, because it does, but context is everything. How does it fit within the entire context? And I think also with flexible dieting, because even clean eating, I know a lot of guys that have done chicken and rice for every single meal, or chicken and sweet potatoes. But also, while those are clean foods by what has historically been bodybuilding definitions, that is a very nutritionally devoid diet. You are eating the same thing over and over again. You are getting a very narrow scope of nutrients. And so I tell my clients, eat the foods that you like, but get a wide variety. Like I tell them, like, get a variety of vegetables. Put in some things like yogurt and different protein sources, because each different food brings a different range of nutrients, and then you're going to have well-rounded nutrition, which will make you healthy. You'll perform better. You'll lose fat at your best capabilities.
That's any one of my clients that's sitting here will say it. I made a video about 2 months ago. It says we use flexible dieting with a shit ton of common sense.
That's good.
Watch your overall fiber intake should be good, which means we're going to choose nutritionally dense foods, and get a wide variety, like Cliff said, a wide variety of protein sources, carb sources, and fat sources.
And vegetables.
Yeah, I consider that carb.
Yeah. I think even too, it's like flexible dieting. People are like, oh, I had my broccoli. I eat broccoli 3 times a day. It's like change different vegetables besides just broccoli or just green beans. Like, buy those mixed vegetables from the store. Like, get different colors, different types. It's important.
I think flexible dieting makes us all better bodybuilders, because it actually teaches you. And the blowback I've had from clients that have hired me, they're like, no, I want you to write me a meal plan. They don't want to count their food. It actually makes you a better bodybuilder, because you learn how to count and track everything, and that way you can be flexible. So I've written the plans where it's like 4 ounces of chicken, 6-ounce sweet potato, cup of broccoli, and I didn't know what was in that. You know what I'm saying? So it teaches you to count, and you'll be a better athlete for it, especially when shit hits the fan and you left your food and you're at work and you need to get something in a quick pinch. You can actually be flexible about it. So, any other questions? One more from Facebook. Oh, we got one right here too.
I got a question about the reverse dieting. So if somebody comes to you with low calories, what do you do? And is that different than after contest prep?
So the question for Facebook, folks tune in, reverse dieting, what do we do when someone comes to us, and is it different? Is it different when?
After like a contest.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if a client comes to me and they're in a caloric deficit, or we're not at a level where like John's example is, if you're eating 1,200 calories a day, that's kind of a basement. Where do we go to get you leaner, right? So what I do is suggest working together for a longer period of time to move that food up before we do any type of cut. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable eating 700-800 calories a day. I guess reverse dieting is pretty individualized as far as I'm concerned. I've done it both ways, where I basically continue to prep but increase my food slowly. That didn't work well with my brain. I couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't want to prep for 8-9 months. I didn't want to prep anymore. So I increased my calories faster, kept a little bit more cardio in, and that worked better for me personally. And I use both tactics for a lot of my clients. So I think they're two different, and I think the incoming client that is on a very low calorie diet is a longer term play than a reverse diet.
Yeah, I'll first thing I'll do is I'll assess their current body fat level, because if they're already really heavy and eating very little, then I want to be careful about not having them gain too much more, because also they're not going to handle that well with their mental state, because people start to get really antsy once their weight gets higher than they want it to. But then I also assess their mental state. You know, where are they standing on this? Are they prepared for that long haul to get things on track? And then I also try to get them, sometimes easier said than done, to be really honest with not only me but themselves. John touched on it. Most people eat more than what they think they do. You know, some people say I'm eating 1,200 calories per day, but you know, that doesn't include the little bites here and there. That doesn't include. Also, here's another thing too: is in the off season when people are having issues getting their calories up, and you know, then that vicious cycle that we see. I find that a lot of people probably cheat on their diet every 4 to 6 days. That's usually when things they get antsy and they cheat in some manner. So I try to get them to be really honest with me and with themselves. Studies have shown that most people overeat their calories that they don't even realize by about 20%. People that are obese tend to overeat calories by about 50%. They don't even realize they're doing it. And so it's one of those things where I try to tell people, like, notice the little things. That bite of your husband's ice cream that you take, you know, that was supposed to be 4 ounces on your sweet potatoes, but that's 5.5. That doesn't matter. Or they just eat and then just don't log it. That just happens also. And then that one day where they had pizza with, you know, friends. Oh, well, you know, it's only one day, but it's happening every 4th day. So that starts to really add up. So to answer your question, consistency will be the first place that I start. And then once you establish that consistency, then you can start manipulating properly. And that goes for post-contest too. Post-contest, if I did their prep, then I know they're probably being consistent. And then I just start adding from there. And I gauge their mental state, their performance, and then their rate of gain and how high we're going.
One thing I'll add, and I actually have gotten some flack. The first book that I wrote, the reverse dieting book, I talk about 10 carbing someone to death. Like, I'll add 10 carbs, I'll add 10 carbs, I'll add 10 carbs. And for a female, for a guy, I might add 20 carbs, like every week. And most people, you know, they've given me a hard time and say, you know what, you're not adding enough. That's too slow. But I'm a very practical person. And the reason why I do it that way is to offset what you were talking about. Because after a show, yeah, if someone is going to stick to their diet and their macros 110%, I would add more carbs than that. It's the extra eating that you're trying to balance with that my clients never tell me. Some of them do once in a while, but they never tell me after a show. They're like, listen, I'm eating all this extra plus the 10 carbs that you're adding to my diet every week. So that's the other thing you have to balance is the extra eating and how much food you can add. Because think about this, if I added 25 carbs to a female's diet every single week for the next 6 weeks, and she was cheating on her diet twice a week, there's 30 pounds over stage weight just waiting to happen. So it's one of those things that's all a balance on where you can add food, reverse dieting, to answer your question. So we've got time for probably one more, and then we need to.
So Greg asked the question, is there a better carb source after training, like certain specific foods?
Kind of touches on what we did a little bit before. Why don't you guys go for this one since I don't want to do carbs that often.
I'll just say this. Carbs post-workout, whatever you can stick to and get them in, I'm 110% okay with anything. I'm not going to push one over the other. It's whatever you can stick to. The thing that I like to recommend is somebody has whey protein after their training to immediately spike protein synthesis and get growth started, because the more spikes you have over the course of time, like, you don't want to eat a chicken breast after your workout. It's not going to be broken down and turned into aminos for hours and hours and hours and hours. So that's the only thing I'm real strict on. But on my diet plans for my clients, it says whey protein and any low-fat carb that you want. And that's just because I leave room to put fat somewhere else, you know, in the off-season. So I don't think there's any. I think if there's a best carb out there, period, over all of them, it would be a white potato. Not for fat loss or muscle gain, just because of the properties of a white potato. It's high in calcium, potassium, it's very filling. To me, a white potato is just it has a lot of vitamins in it and nutrients and minerals. Like, it's one of those things that's probably the best carb source I can think of for cell volumization and things of that nature. So but I don't think it matters. You're
No.
laughing at me.
I just get this image of you drinking a protein shake and taking a bite
No,
out of
I agree with John, because I think we could poll, 20 people, and we may get 20 different answers on what they want to eat post-workout. So whatever it is for you,
Yeah.
unless we have to care.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Facebook Live, we're out here. You can go ahead and hit end on that.